can give you the details. Up. It. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to our episode of Captain's Quarters Podcast. It is a week before Christmas, December 18th. Cheers to Davey, Longwood, Mandy, and Travis. Everybody will understand who Travis is in just a few moments. And Gunfire, Hellfire, Henley. Aye. Cheers to everyone. Glad to have you aboard. As always, ladies and gentlemen, our major sponsor for the podcast is the Pirate and Treasure Museum of St. Augustine, Florida. It is the largest pirate museum in the world, not by its physical size, but by its content. 850 artifacts on pirate history. And if you haven't been there yet, well, you need to come out and see it. It is well worth a trip. If you want to follow us, ladies and gentlemen, we're on YouTube. This show goes to YouTube every night, and then you can watch all of our episodes. Use that QR code. Like us, subscribe to us, follow us, do all those little clicks and bells and whistles, and be a part of the Captain's Quarters Podcast crew on YouTube. Upon that note, ladies and gentlemen, we always go straight into 8 Bells, which is a way for us to honor certain people who have passed from our existence into the next world. 8 Bells is sponsored by Riker's crew of reenactors, good crew members of the St. Augustine Swashbucklers, and also Spanish and British reenactors here in St. Augustine, Florida. For now, though, it's time for me to do some reading. 8 Bells. Davey, our first one. Jeffrey Foskett, an American guitarist and singer best known as a touring and studio musician for Brian Wilson and the Beach Boys since the 1980s. Foskett was described as the Beach Boys' vice principal by its touring members. In 1996, he debuted a solo artist with the album Through My Window. He was 67 years old, ladies and gentlemen. Andre Keith Blogger was an American actor known for his role as Detective Frank Pembleton in the NBC drama series Homicide: Life on the Streets, and Captain Raymond Holt in Fox NBC police comedy series Brooklyn Nine-Nine. He won 2 Primetime Emmys and was nominated for 2 Golden Globe Awards. He was only 61 years old, ladies and gentlemen. Lawrence Edward Miggins, an American outfielder and first baseman in the Major League Baseball, who played for the St. Louis Cardinals in parts from the 48 to 52 seasons. 1948 to 52, if you aren't paying attention. Listed at 6'4" and 198 pounds, Miggins batted and threw right-handed. He was born in the Bronx, New York, to Irish immigrants. He was 98 years old, ladies and gentlemen. Ken Pachero Satsuma, and I was able to get that one done. Born Yasukai, I'm going to mess that one up now. We'll leave it alone. A Japanese actor and stuntman who portrayed Godzilla in the Heisei films from 84 to 95. While filming Godzilla movies, Satsuma would regularly pass out on the set due to lack of oxygen while wearing the poorly ventilated and rubberized suits. He was 76 years old. Colin John Burgess, an Australian rock musician who was the drummer in The Master's Apprentice from 68 to 72. He was later the original drummer with hard rock band AC/DC from 73 to 74. Master's Apprentice had a top 20 singles chart success with 510 Man, Think About Tomorrow, Today, and Turn Up Your Radio, and Because I Love You. In 98, Master's Apprentice with Burgess were inducted into the ARIA Hall of Fame. He was 77 years old. George F. McGinnis, an American professional basketball player who played 11 seasons in the American Basketball Association and the National Basketball Association. A 3-year ABA All-Star with Pacers, McGinnis was named the ABA Most Valuable Player in 75 and won 2 ABA championships with the team. He was a 3-time NBA star with the Philadelphia 76ers, and he was 73 years old. James McCaffrey, an American actor best known for his voice role as Max Payne in the Max Payne video game series, Jimmy Keith on Rescue Me, and Captain Arthur O'Brien in New York Undercover. He also had main roles and recurring roles in a number of television series as well as appearing in feature films. He was 65 years old. Joseph Anthony Amp Fiddler, an American singer, songwriter, keyboardist, and record producer from Detroit, Michigan. His musical styles included funk, soul, dance, electronica music. He was probably best known for his contributions to the band Enchantment and as part of George Clinton's Parliament and the Funkadelic groups from 85 to 96. He was 65 years old. Ladies and gentlemen, that's 6 people that have now passed and are part of many of our lives. We raise our glass and give them 8 bells. By honor to them and their legacy. That little moan that sounded like a car going by might have been death itself going on by. And on that note, Joke of the Week by Mini Mayhem. We have a new sponsor this week, ladies and gentlemen. Our good friend Travis, sitting right there, is our new sponsor. And that is, if I get it right, Salt City Comics. Correct, Mr. Travis?
Correct.
Very good. Salt City Comics sponsoring Mayhem's Joke of the Week. And Marco's Pizza will be doing something different for us in 2024. But for now, bring on Mini Mayhem.
Alright, mates. Mini Mayhem here with the Joke of the Week. Sponsored by Salt City Comics. What is a pirate's favorite cereal? Think about it. The answer at the end of the show.
I might know that one, but I'll leave it to the end of the show for the reveal because I think I understand that one. I use that joke myself with the children when I do pirate tours in the Pirate and Treasure Museum. How about Quote of the Week by Spyglass Travel? Now, if you want a good walking tour of the oldest city in the nation, call my friends at Spyglass Travel. They will give you a great walking tour, and you will enjoy and learn at the same time and exercise because it's a great walking tour. Spyglass Travel. Give us the quote of the week, Mr. Davey. Whenever you find yourself on the side of the majority, it is time to pause and reflect. That's an interesting quote. Mark Twain, who was very wise in his ways, and that is a very interesting quote. I might have to reflect on that myself. Great quote by Spyglass Travel, ladies and gentlemen. And of course, we want you to call them if you need something. Hey, are you still there? Oh, wow, that was strange. Everybody disappeared off my screen. Must have been magic. Everybody's back. That's good. And question of the week. We don't have a question of the week, ladies and gentlemen. Put that back up there, Davey. I'm going to argue it. Aye, the rum's not always gone yet. I still have some. Question of the week, ladies and gentlemen, is Ancient City Sirens, but we're not doing question of the week this time. We're going to do one more of our 3-week series on talking to people about the times that are going on. Ladies and gentlemen, everybody has problems. Everybody has depression. And I beg of you, I ask you, if you have problems, if you are depressed, if you need to talk to somebody, talk to your friends, talk to your family, your brothers, your sisters, your moms, your dads, everybody. We all need a little extra shoulder to lean on, especially at this time of the season. But if that doesn't help you, 1-800-273-8255. That is the suicide prevention lifeline that you can call, and maybe somebody else can talk to you. But having an ear to talk to, an understanding person, might help you, because I have to say, there's nothing that is so bad that you have to leave us. We want everybody to stay. Your friends and family would suffer very much if you weren't here. So please, reach out if you need it. The holidays, Christmas, New Year's, is a hard time for everybody. And this is our public service announcement that we want you to reach out. I'm lucky I have the St. Augustine Swashbucklers, 50 members. I have Mandy and Longwood and Hellfire and 47 other pirates that work with me and do things. If I need to talk to somebody, there's at least one or two that I can call and they'll come sit and talk to me. I hope you have the same. But if you don't, there's your lifeline. Please don't think of it as a bad thing that you need help. Think of it as a good thing that somebody wants to talk to you. So, on that note, make sure you have a good Christmas. Make sure you have a good New Year's. There's always friends around. Crew adventures completed and on the horizon. Go ahead, Davey, that's fine. If you need a ride with Santa through the night of lights, there are still 3 nights left. That's actually 4. The 21st, I believe I'm doing rides too. 21st, 22nd, 23rd, and 24th. There's still a few rides left if you want to book a ride with Santa and see the night of lights. Once that's done, though, ladies and gentlemen, Captain Mayhem will be guiding you through the night of lights for the last week of December and the first 2 weeks of January. Come on out, take a ride with Captain Mayhem and see the night of lights. One of the 10 top cities by the National Geographic rated as the best place to go and see Christmas lights. It's beautiful here. We've actually had the opportunity as a crew to see the city from the water also, the Matanzas Bay, and see the waterfront so lit up in lights. It is a wonderful sight, and if you want to try it, come out and say hello to Captain Mayhem and be a part of our tours. Anything else? Oh, you know what, Davey? Did you happen to get anything for Miss Gina's event?
No, Captain.
I didn't think about it until just now, but Miss Gina had a wonderful event this past Saturday night, and she was raising money for Alia's Acres, and it was a great event. They had music, they had magic, they had food. It was a wonderful event, and I'm sorry we didn't think about grabbing some pictures. Maybe we'll put a little film clip together for next week, because next week was going to be pre-recorded. We will not be on the air on Christmas night. But Davey and I will work on that. Upon that note, anything else? No?
Nope.
Then it's now time to actually officially invite our guest to be a part of the show. Now, this is Travis Romney. Did I get that right?
You did.
Now, Travis Romney is an artist of cartoon variety. And Davey. Come on. Davey, quickly, put up that banner that shows all the cartoon characters of the Captain's Quarters podcast.
Oh, yeah, that's a cool one.
Yeah, that's a cool one. Put it up there. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is Hellfire Henley, Navigator Longwood, Captain William Mayhem, and of course, Cartographer Mandy Joe. I think out of all of us, Mandy Joe looks the best. I'm not going to say anything more. But ladies and gentlemen, those are the cartoons that this fine man has done for the crew. And as a thank you, he will be the sponsor of Joke of the Week by Mini Mayhem for the entire season of 2024. So, on
Captain,
that note,
before you go more,
what do you want to show?
Oh, something special for you. Ready?
All right. Ah, look at that. That is very cool. I like that. Very, very cool. Wonderful. Thank you very much. I like that very much.
Travis is awesome.
He is. Very good artwork. Very good artwork. So, how long you been a comic cartoon artist?
I was about to say, definitely a cartoon artist. I'm not funny enough to be up on stage. So I've actually been drawing cartoons since I was about 3 years old. So when I was a kid, though, my parents told me I needed to do something else with my life that actually made money. And here I am showing them. So
I can relate to that because I practiced magic all when I was a kid, 8 years old on. Locked myself in my room during my high school years to work on magic tricks and card tricks. And my dad always used to tell me, you're never going to amount to much. Come up with a job that'll do something for you. So I can relate to that. So now what do your parents think?
I still think they have a hard time believing it. But it's entertaining to see where the world is now versus like when I was in high school. I mean, the other day I saw this really cool post on Facebook, and it was a prom picture or some kind of formal dance picture, and the girls were all dressed in matching dresses coordinated with the men who had superheroes underneath their shirts. And I just laughed because when I was a kid, you wouldn't get a date to the dance if you tried to wear a superhero shirt to a dance, and now it's a standard thing. So
yeah, geek is in nowadays.
Yep.
I just was watching on I'm a Bill Maher fan. I don't know if you are or not, but I'm a Bill Maher fan, and he has one segment of his show that's called New Rule. Now, I'm not going to go over the whole thing, but his new rule was that men should stop worshiping superheroes. and I had to laugh at it because cartoons and superheroes and Marvel and Batman and you name it, and you got Superman on your chest. It gives us a feel-good way of life now, and it kind of is a comfortable thing for us. Here I am, 65 years old, and I'm dressed as a bloody damn pirate.
I know that feeling. I've been going to a comic book store for 31 years now. Same one out in Salt Lake, Dr. Bolt's Comics. And it's crazy how, as I was growing up, I was reading these comics, and they really reflected what life was like, what society was like. And then you go to school and nobody talked about it. And now, like you were saying, it's everywhere. And it's funny when people come up to me to talk comics and all they know is the MCU, the Marvel Cinematic Universe, or the movie side of things, and have no idea what the source material is. And so it's been pretty entertaining.
Because, I mean, we go back with comics. We're going to do some history of comics here. Batman and Superman have been around for 5, 6, 7 decades.
Superman came out in 1939. So
yep. So that's 8 decades.
Yep.
So one of my heroes, who my dad always just used to laugh at me about, I was a huge Doc Savage fan. No, I'm good.
Okay.
I'm good. Thank you. My other half checking me from the ship's deck to make sure I'm okay. I was a Doc Savage fan. I don't know if you know who that was. A lot of people don't, but I was a big comic book fan for him. And then a couple of Western comics, Two Gun Kid, and I just comics. But there was messages in there. They were subversive messages, but I think they're bigger messages now. Are you doing comics on an educational level or on an enjoyment level?
Both, actually. So originally it started off more as an enjoyment or kind of a laugh, because as much as I love comic books, when I started the web comic, it was actually more modeled on like Peanuts by Charles Schultz, or Baby Blues, or Calvin and Hobbes. I really enjoyed the Sunday funnies. The problem you ran into is by the time I was old enough to start, expressing my talent in that, the newspaper business was kind of going the way of the dinosaur. And so that's when I launched the web comic. And it was really to start kind of poking fun at just life and culture, especially out here in Utah. And the picture you have up right, or was up right there, was the mighty Utah. And he's Utah's Superman, but he gets his powers from radioactive green jello, which is a pretty big staple out here in Utah. And what's funny about him is how he kind of created. I got pretty big when I first had kids, a little over 300 pounds, and I was playing with my son and pretending to be Superman. And in his 3-4-year-old mind, he looked at me and said, "Dad, fat people can't be superheroes." And I looked at him and said, "Watch me." So I made one. So, and I was surprised at how well he kind of took off. I don't know. The world is so serious nowadays. I really enjoy making people laugh. And so that's kind of been the main focus of my comics, both the web comic and the comic book.
It just made me laugh because a thought came through my head. Portly guys should not be comic book heroes of any type, but then look at the success of Family Guy.
Absolutely. Not only that, the popularity of Thor in Endgame. Fat Thor, and then you had depressed Thor. And then you had Dad Bod Spider-Man from in Spider-Verse. Those two were one of the most popular cosplays that were out there. And it was really simply because most men, 95% of them, didn't have to do anything other than put on the costume. So it reflects a little bit more of what, our society's like nowadays. Not all of us can, look like Chris Hemsworth. So
I would say what it reflects is that we're much more accepting as a society than, and this will probably hit a nerve with a few people, but I'm going to say it. As a society, as people, we're much more accepting of the people around us than the news stations want to allow everybody to think.
Agreed. And like we were talking about, comics have always been a gateway to that. I just noticed Will the historian commented about how Stan Lee, the X-Men was his reflection on the civil rights movement. And that has just been a timeless story since it first, started back then to now. And so it's crazy how if you actually sit down and read the source material, how close to life it actually is.
Well, here's another one for you. I don't know if you know this or not, but Walt Disney himself was brought in to create some support cartoons for some of the world things that were going on back then, because he had not become completely famous because of Disneyland in the 50s, but he still was creating things because Mickey Mouse was, and I'm going to get the name wrong, Mickey Mouse was Steamboat Willie, and Steamboat Willie was prior to the Second World War. So Walt Disney was brought in to do, and he wasn't the only comic or cartoon. There were other cartoons that were generated from the Second World War. Beetle Bailey is one that I think is probably one of those also. Am I correct?
You're correct. And touching on history, Mickey Mouse was actually modeled a lot after Felix the Cat. Felix the Cat was kind of the big cartoon at the time when Walt Disney was trying to develop Mickey Mouse. So,
yes. Nightingale in Florida asks a really good question. Do you still draw all your cartoons on paper, or do you do it digitally now?
So I actually do it digitally. That being said, I do teach art part-time for an elementary school here locally. And so it's fun to have the kids come up and I'll do quick sketches on paper. When we do cover art, or we'll do that on the actual blank covers for the comics. But most of my stuff is done digitally. It's crazy how even artists change. And you get so used to drawing digitally. The other day I was sketching something out on a piece of paper. I found myself trying to zoom in on the piece of paper before I realized it, was actually paper and not my iPad. So.
Will the historian, just so you know, most everybody does, but you're new to all this. Will the historian is actually my son, and he's at North Alabama. He's a history teacher in schools up there.
Nice.
But he just put another post up there that's just perfect. I always go as Clark Kent, changing into Superman. The suit hides some of the chunky.
That's a way to do it. When you cosplay, you got to deal with what you got. So, and I admire you for being I was just gonna say, I admire him for being a teacher. Like I said, I do it part time and really only focus on art. And so the getting to know the teachers and how much effort and how much they care about their students has been pretty awe-inspiring. So I appreciate him doing that.
So, and I watch my son with his posts and everything. He is hugely loved by his students because he dresses the part of different characters for his history lessons, and he really and more teachers really need to get involved with the way they interact with their students.
One of the things that has been successful for me in my class is I took they have a little cartoon owl as their mascot named Ollie, and I with my lessons I'll actually draw him in different poses and have Ollie teaching the lessons, and so the kids have really gotten behind that. So
sorry, I'm answering a quick message here. I have two screens going on, so we try to pay attention to everybody because we get some other messages here and there. So Bronco Bill comic book. I don't remember that one.
That's actually one I'm not familiar with either. So I saw that pop up.
We'll have to look that one up. Dennis the Menace was awesome.
He was awesome, and he was one of the more popular staple newspaper comics back in the day. See, it's interesting. Back when newspaper comics were huge, they were able to run like serials, a lot like sitcoms and our television shows of the day were. And so you were able to do character development over years. And now it's interesting that society has become a lot more of a binge type of society because of Netflix and the streaming services. And so you'll have a lot of people that'll go to comic shops and not buy the single trade issues. They want to wait until, or excuse me, the single floppy issues. They want to wait until the trade pack comes, so that way they can get that whole story all at once.
I remember a comic I used to pay attention to pretty religiously, and it was a newspaper comic, and that was and I may get this wrong, Peter and the Pirates, and it was a modern day pirate, and there were lessons in there, and it was something that I remember every Sunday. That was the first thing I went to in the Sunday newspaper. Dad got everything else, I got the comics. So, but my hugely favorite of all comics, and I'm going to tell you mine, and then I'm going to ask you yours. I was a huge Far Side. Loved Far Side. That artist was able to do something in one square that was just amazing with his sarcastic ideas. So who is your favorite?
Calvin and Hobbes by Bill Watterson. I definitely was a Calvin and Hobbes kid, and it was amazing how Bill Watterson took, the simplest cartoons, especially the style of cartooning, which is very similar to Schultz's Peanuts. And not only was he able to relay humor in a good story, but he was actually able to portray deep messages through the eyes of a child. And that, to me, was always awe-inspiring.
I think that was the simplicity of Peanuts, too, with Charles Schultz.
And it was in.
Go ahead.
And I apologize for interrupting. I was just going to say it goes back to your point, because Schultz actually started drawing Peanuts while he was in the military for World War II. So I believe it was World War II. Might not have been World War II. But
no, I think you're right. It was World War II.
Yeah, so, he started doing his sketches for it during there. So
Zachary Harker, a while back, I'm sure that's supposed to be saw an article where people are saying, keep politics out of my comics. The article showed old comics have always used some form of politics as a form of drive. Look, you can go all the way back. Before you get a chance to answer this, Travis, I'm going to throw this in. You can go all the way back historically to the time Lincoln was running for president, and there were comics about Lincoln against his look, his ability, and all kinds of comics that made fun of Lincoln because he was a backwoods, illiterate man, who he really wasn't. But comics have been a part of politics forever, and comics in politics is very important.
Absolutely. Political cartoons themselves, the ones that actually delve right into politics, in my opinion, it's sad that they're starting to go the way of the dinosaur. But they've always been used to call politicians out on things and bring light to issues and help people understand some of the more complex issues. But going back to the point about it being a drive, people tend to write and or draw what they're passionate about. And a lot of that is the things that are affecting them currently. Superman back in 1939 was actually written as a social crusader. In the first issues of Action Comics, he beat up landlords and wife abusers. He was nowhere near the icon of hope that he was today. And so again, it's those social issues of the times that are driving storylines, because that's what's affecting the people who are writing and or drawing the comics.
So do you see, and this is going to be a touchy question, and we don't have to go too far with it, but do you see that comics sidestep and ignore the wokeness attitude that's in our society today?
It really depends on the comic and the person writing it and their beliefs. It's interesting, though, that along this topic, just recently, CEO of Disney, I believe it's Iger is his last name, started talking about how they were focusing more on messaging than story, and they needed to go back to telling good stories. But again, I kind of have, they're kind of intertwined in a way, because like was brought up with X-Men, that was really a reflection on the civil rights movement. And so things like that are part of our society. And so it really just depends on who and what we all focus on as far as stories go.
So Will the historian said, if you could do a story for either Marvel or DC, which one would you write for, and what hero would you use? That's a tricky one.
I was about to say it's pretty easy. DC and Superman. I mean, I do draw Utah Superman, but DC. It's funny. Another thing I saw on Facebook that was just perfect is if you look at DC Comics, Superman, Aquaman, Wonder Woman, they all have these iconic symbols, and more of the Marvel Cinematic Universe doesn't, and that's because their MCU is more rooted in realistic type heroes. I mean, you have your Sentries, your Captain Marvels on the MCU side who are a little overpowered, but on the flip side, DC is more hope and almost godlike even in their pantheon of heroes. So I think it'd be fun to write that.
I just saw somebody pop up with the name of a comic that I completely forgot. And BC and Captain Caveman.
Captain Caveman.
BC was a great one too. I love BC. BC was kind of the forefront of Far Side in a way. Right. It was very much. Cartoons have always been a part of our lives, and they serve a purpose. And I truly believe that cartoons and cartoonists is the same direction as comics on stage. I made that slip about you being a comic, which you're not. You're a comic artist, but it's really both sad but a great challenge that when you're dealing with humor, even people get offended with humor, and I just find that unusually stupid at times. Because humor is supposed to point out the faults that we have, but by pointing them out, we're supposed to be laughing at not them but ourselves.
Right, and it was actually a quote by Mickey Mouse who said that to laugh at yourself is to love yourself. And that's really, I mean, if you step back and look at things too seriously, I mean, all it does is send you, get you in a heart attack at an early age. If you step back and just laugh and take things for what it is, I don't know, you live happier.
Well, and I don't know if Mandy has told, I did comedy clubs in Las Vegas. I've done comedy clubs around, and I'd be nervous doing comedy clubs nowadays because the kind of comedy I did was not only innuendo, but it was the kind of comedy that I would bring people up into the magic tricks, and they always screwed them up in some way, shape, or form, but I screwed them up worse, and it still had a good outcome. But people get so offended by the smallest thing now. It's one of the reasons why some of the comedians that I know, and even some of the big names, certain venues they won't do anymore. But have you had any? So going along those lines, have you had anybody try to push your comics and your artwork away?
Luckily, I have not. I really try to walk the line between funny and offensive. I sometimes get as close as I can to offensive just because I find it funny. But it's interesting. Some of the times, or some of the things I'll draw and I'll think, oh, everybody's going to laugh. This will be huge. Just to take off. People will enjoy this. And nothing really comes of it. And then I'll post one that I don't think, I think is like, haha, and it blows up. So, I mean, you can never guess what your audience will always find funny. But I try to be as respectful to people and culture as possible. And I really stick to that motto, like I said, to laugh at yourself is to love yourself. So that's my main goal, is not to be offensive, just funny.
Yeah, and it's a fine line, and the excitement is trying to get as close to that line without falling over it too.
Absolutely.
That's the way it was for me as a comedian on stage. Innuendos can be a lot of fun, and the fun part, more so than anything else, and I think it would equate to your comics too. The fun part is that you're going to make fun of something, or you're going to put something up there, and not everybody's going to get it. And the ones that get it, they're the ones laughing the hardest. And the ones that don't get it, you're laughing at them for not getting it.
Agreed.
Comedy in all veins and all forms is important to our lifestyle. Favorite comic item or memorabilia you own? That's a good question.
It's actually more currently. So my favorite, as much as I love Superman, one of my favorite heroes is actually the Sentry from Marvel. And quite recently at the Salt Lake Fan X, we had Mark Bagley, who was one of the lead artists on the New Avengers when Sentry was a part of that team in the 90s and early 2000s. And so I had his comics. I had him sign it. I also got a head sketch done by him. And then one of the items I was able to come across, and this is the memorabilia, is an actual hand-drawn page turned into Marvel by Mark Bagley of the Sentry. And so I had him sign that as well, and I got it all framed. And it was cool to sit and talk with him because Marvel, DC, and comics have largely gone to digital, and you'll see a lot of artists, even if they sketch it out on paper, will scan it into some kind of program and do their inking and coloring that way. But Mark Bagley is one of the kind of the old school guys who really does things by paper. And so it was interesting to see when I handed him his own sheet of Sentry, how he just kind of sat and looked at it for a while. And he was a really cool guy. So that's me, one of my heroes. So
I'm going to throw the question back. Oh, there's a good one. This is your work, right?
This is, yep.
Now you try. That's a funny one. I like that one.
Thank you.
I want to throw the question back to my son, Will the historian. You ask what the favorite comic item or memorabilia he owns is. I know that my son has some things, so I want to see what he tells us is his favorite now. So when he pops that up there, we'll go with that. But I personally have some things on my wall. I have Flash Gordon on my wall, and a couple of others here and there. I'm just a huge fan of anybody that has talent that's in the entertainment field, and Davey and I, through our enjoyment and our involvement of Ancient City Con for the last 5 or 6 years, we've met a whole lot of really fun people and some really good cartoonists or some art anime people. I really have to plead total ignorance because I'm still learning anime. So, are you familiar with Strange Tales or Hawkman?
I am both. At least I think if you're referring to the Hawkman of the DC universe, then yes. But I'm actually familiar with both. So,
Strange Tales would interest me because that sounds mysterious and probably borderline horror.
Yep, they touch on a lot of supernatural and horror, and it's a pretty cool series.
There were some when I was younger. I used to really rob the comic book stands of the Circle K store or whatever it was back then, 7-Eleven, for certain comic books. And I was a huge Jonah Hex fan. And then when they made the movie, I became a huge fan of the movie too. And that was kind of a supernatural right there. But I was always, as a magician, there were, besides comics and supernatural, things that interested me were the bizarre, the Bermuda Triangle and vampires and werewolves, and did they really exist? And comic books bring all that out into the public eye for kids, children, and adults now to read.
And what's cool is if you are a comic book fan and a fan of the actual source material, as opposed to like the movies and the shows, when the movies and the shows come out and they start doing deep dives into the comics, like for example, in the Scarlet Witch series and then followed by Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, a book called The Darkhold was actually pretty predominantly used in both the show and the movie. And it actually made its first appearance or origins in what was called Werewolf by Night, which was an older comic that focused on the werewolf, but also introduced Moon Knight and a few of the other ones that are now more popular. So
my son says he has first print of Batman, Cacophony, signed by Kevin Smith.
I love Kevin Smith. He does Comic Book Men and a few other things, and to the geek culture, he's just huge. So I love Kevin Smith.
Yeah. Have you had a chance to meet him yet?
I have not. So he and the Comic Book Men were set to come out here to Salt Lake Fan X one time, and they ended up canceling. And I had a photo op with him, but that was as close as I got. I didn't actually get to meet him.
I'm going to have to talk to the powers that be for Ancient City Con, which happens here in September, and see if they can't get you out here.
That'd be fun.
I'll send. I know the big guy that runs Ancient City Con out here, and I'll send him some information and see if he can't bring you out here. It'd be really kind of cool to have you out here. Because
That'd be fun.
If we had you out here also, and your stay extended over a Monday, then you could sit in that chair and we could have more conversations in person, which would be a lot of fun for both of us, I'm sure.
Agreed.
So,
I'd enjoy that.
Have you done any full comic books yet?
I have. So I've got 3 issues of the Mighty Utah and Jello saga out. The 4th one's set to be out in spring. I have a book called The Demon of Devlin Hall. It's a lot like Daredevil, only it takes place in a high school, and instead of beating up gangsters, he beats up bullies. We have the Deputy Deseret, which is another Utah kind of trope on that. So yeah, we've got a couple of them out that we really enjoy. So
how long does it take you to do one issue? Wait, let me ask this question first, then we'll go to that question. When you're doing a comic book, are you doing the artwork and the verbal, or do you have somebody? You're doing both.
I do it all. Yep.
All right.
Yep.
So that then leads to the question I was trying to ask. How long does it take you to do one episode or one issue?
It takes 3 to 4 months roughly to get one issue done. And that's doing all the art, the lettering, and then also the formatting and sending it off to print.
Now, are you self-published in that way then?
In some way, so like The Demon of Devlin Hall, yeah, it's self-published, but the Utahns published through a company, Salt City Comics, which is related to the Lady Studios. So they're kind of a smaller print out of Salt Lake. So
I'm just envisioning we've got to come up with a pirate comic.
I'm good with that. I think it'd be fun.
I think it would be a lot of fun. We just have to sit down and figure out the direction and if there's a message, or if we just want to have fun and make Mandy walk the plank.
Fair.
Oh, but slaves did that. That was a slave trader thing, not a pirate thing.
I know, but I'll make an exception for you.
And I've known Mandy for 7 years. My guess is she'd have all of us walking the plank. So
More than 7 years.
2016.
Was it 2016?
Mm-hmm.
Raising havoc out at the slot farm?
Yep. Good times.
Wow, here's one. Athena Rivers says she has one comic that is on her bookshelf that is a first issue special Dr. Fate. Do you know who that one is?
I do know who Dr. Fate is. He is a Lord of Order out of DC. It's a pretty cool story, especially when you start delving into the mythos between the Lords of Order and the Lords of Chaos, and it's pretty fun.
I was a Doctor Strange fan when I was younger, and when they brought Doctor Strange to the movies, I actually thought the guy that was Cumberfeld.
Benedict Cumberbatch.
Benedict Cumberbatch.
I thought he was actually probably one of the best matchup characters for that person. I really thought he did a wonderful job. But then I'm a big fan of him and some of the other actors there. So when it comes to the movies, though, as far as comics and the movies go, what do you think this is going to be a 2-part question for you. What do you think is the closest comic to movie portrayal that you know? And what do you think is the farthest away?
If you really like the Netflix Daredevil series,
right?
It really delves into the Man in Black or Daredevil Year One, and they stuck pretty close to the comic book on that one. I was pretty impressed. As far as far away, any of the early 2000s, I mean, flip side of that, Daredevil with Ben Affleck. I mean, a lot of the early ones really didn't hit the mark there. It's interesting that you bring up the actors being paired to their stories, and that's what they used to do. But now what's happening is big companies like Disney running the Marvel Universe are actually starting to put the cart before the horse. They found it, like Sentry, for example. They found an actor, I think it pronounces Stephen Yeun. He plays Glenn on The Walking Dead, and he voices Invincible in the Invincible series. Well, he looks absolutely and doesn't have any of the mannerisms of the Sentry. And so what's interesting is right after they cast him, they ended up killing off the old Sentry, and are now running a title to explain how someone like Stephen Yeun got the powers of the Sentry to tie into the movie that's supposed to be coming out in the next year or two. And so it's interesting how they're doing that.
That's kind of the same thing that happened in the Green Lantern setup.
Green Lantern had a bad story.
Green Lantern has had so many stories, but what's interesting is you actually had a really good Green Lantern story, speaking of social issues, where he teams up with Green Arrow. And it was in the late 80s, early 90s, and Green Arrow starts having some drug addiction issues, and they start traveling the country, and they really delve deep in some pretty deep social issues. And that was one of the best written comic books that I've ever read. So he does have high points at some point.
So just sucked with his movie writing.
True. Yes. That being said, give great
So
fodder for Ryan Reynolds.
I'll put you on the spot. Who's the best Batman?
Ooh. The problem you run into is they all play a little different Batman. So like Ben Affleck, he did a great job. If you look at him playing older Batman, like in Dark Knight Rises, that type of thing, he played a great older Batman. That's what people didn't seem to understand, is he wasn't, prime Batman. He was Batman in the waning years. And so he did a great job there.
And put it like that, I would have to agree with you, because he's not on the top of my list as the best Batman. But having you explain it that way, I've changed that just changed my thought on him. You're absolutely right. That's a good way to look at it.
Yep, you have to look at what they're playing. I mean, Michael Keaton's, obviously he's iconic. But what's interesting is a lot of people rag on Adam West's Batman. But if you look at Batman written in the 60s, 70s, it was kind of a zany, funny type of comic. It wasn't until the early 90s when Michael Keaton did his Batman and they got more gritty with it, did the comics finally follow suit and give us a Batman that we all wanted.
Well, at my age, I can admit this, we would run home every afternoon after school so we could catch Batman with Adam West. And I remember the first season was still in black and white. And then the second season, I think it was the second season, went to color. But we would run home and rush to the TV just to catch Batman, because it was always, same bat channel, same bat time. And so to me, and my age, TV Batman and Adam West, that's iconic. But the original Batman was a very dark character, and Keaton and some of the others that played Batman, those darker characters, was more closer to the original Batman. But I still am an Adam West fan.
Nope, Adam West's awesome. It's like George Reeves playing Superman. A lot of people overlook that because Christopher Reeves came in and was just he was Superman. But if you actually go back and watch the old black and white serials with George Reeves in there, it was very hopeful. It really portrayed Action Comics and the Superman title at the time perfectly.
Absolutely, and I remember those too. My childhood was Batman and Superman, and we didn't have Spider-Man and Wolverine and all those others. It was more of a limited set of superheroes for us, but they were also message driven for children. I'll throw this in. Same with Roy Rogers and all the other Western heroes. They were all message driven. There's Adam West right there. Great Batman. Really, it's the one I remember the most. And I'm lucky I got to ride in the TV series Batmobile. It was in Vegas one time, and I knew who it was, and I got to ride in the Batmobile. Ride, not drive. I was disappointed, but oh well. So, Will the Historian, love for Adam West should never be mocked. That's someone's Batman.
Very true.
All right, very good. So, Dad took me to see the first Keaton Batman. Yeah, that's true. We did go to see that. I remember. Yeah. So, comics, superheroes, they serve a purpose for us, and they give us memories. It's like music. Something happens, and that piece of music or that piece of comic or that piece of movie sticks in our head, and that gives us something to relate to. So on that, who is, and if Davey's quick, he may be able to do this, who is your favorite character that you've drawn? And you can leave Captain Mayhem out of this one, but who is your favorite character that you've drawn? Is it the character or the self-portrayal of yourself?
So the Mighty Utah, probably just because it has such strong ties to my son. And like I said, it stemmed out of playtime with my son. So it's also the one I'm most known for. It's funny, most people don't know my name, but when they walk through Comic-Con and see the giant blue guy on the banner, everyone stops and goes, I know that guy from Facebook, or, I have his comics, and they come over. And so he's become very loved by people. And so I'd have to say the Mighty Utah.
So how old is that character? When did you first start drawing him?
2014. So, wow.
That makes him 6, 7, 8, 9 years old now.
9 years old, yeah. So
how old's your son?
He is 14.
So what does he think about all this now?
Oh, he loves it. He goes around and tells people that he was one of the reasons why Utah was created, and he likes to brag it up. So he actually just went to a debate tournament for his high school and did an informative topic on how comic books affect our lives and the history of comic books, and he ended up winning first place. So I mean, I couldn't be prouder of the fact that he's keeping the comic book and comic book history stuff alive. So,
well, that's a wonderful thing to be proud of him for. He basically is defending your right to be a comic.
Yep, agreed.
Artist. Very good. So, does he have any of the same talents?
No, he actually doesn't have any interest in drawing or anything. He does have my sarcasm, which is good and bad, I guess, all at the same time. But he wants to go on and be a doctor. He's doing it smart and actually trying to make a good living somewhere. So, well,
that's good. You'll have somebody to fall back on.
Yeah, that's what I tell him is he's my retirement plan. So,
and Zachary Harker just put up a good one too. I kind of half remember this because I wasn't a G.I. Joe fan, but when my son was small, the G.I. Joe cartoons were very, very prominent then. Knowing is half the battle. Each episode had a message at the end. Same with Captain Planet. Yeah.
I'm actually really excited to see the G.I. Joe direction that they've just started this year. G.I. Joe starting to cross over with Transformers in the comics, and they actually started doing that in the movies as well. G.I. Joe's got some awesome stories that are coming out right now. So if you're wanting to jump on G.I. Joe, now would be the time.
Well, I'll have to remember that because I remember my Christmases in the 60s. I got the big G.I. Joes. That's before they were little action figures. We got the big G.I. Joes, and I got the space capsule. I think I was the one that got the space capsule, and my brother got the Jeep. And we had, and then our sister had Barbie, so there was always a date going on there. So, but the different stories.
I was about to say, segueing, if you think about the awesome adventures Barbie has had with the brothers' toys. I mean, my sister had Barbies. I had superheroes adventures going on there. If you think about all the adventures Barbie has been dragged on, it's pretty impressive.
I got the Jeep and the floodlight. That Ransom Mayhem is my brother. Yeah, I thought he got the Jeep with the floodlight. I got the space capsule because I was really big on the space program back then, and I still have pictures from the 64 World's Fair of some of the space stuff that was up there. So Santa Claus brought me the space capsule and the G.I. Joe with the space outfit. But then they shrunk him down, and then it became more they did cartoons, and now they do comic books. So the G.I. Joe franchise is huge, but it's been around since the early 60s. So have you gone the route of having any of your characters come out and be actual costume characters in real life yet?
I didn't, but somebody at Comic-Con did. They cosplay as him and showed up, and it was so cool. It was surreal to see my character portrayed, and they did a great job as far as the costume goes. And it was funny as I was sitting there, my wife had left the booth, and as I was sitting there talking to the gentleman who cosplayed as, and my wife comes back and she said she had to pause because she was like, the voices in your head had come to life, and he was standing right there. It was pretty cool. So he walked around for 3 days dressed as the Mighty Utah and got a lot of pictures. It was really cool.
That's got to be an amazing experience to see something you created on paper come out to be a real life character.
And like I said, it was impressive that somebody took the time and effort. I mean, he probably spent 6 months on the costume, and it was perfect. So
very, very cool. That's what's the word I want to look for here? That is a testament to your talents, but they say that imitation is the serious form of flattery.
Yep.
And that would be a perfect example. A perfect example. Wow. So tell us so you've done a couple of cons then, right?
Yeah, I do a lot of I call it the Jello Belt. It's where the kind of the Utah culture goes. You go Idaho, Utah, Nevada, Arizona. So that's kind of where I stuck to. So I did Denver Con, Vegas Con, did Salt Lake Con, Wasatch Con, Boise had a small one. So kind of just stuck to the Mountain West. But it's been fun traveling and seeing how far the reach of the Utah has. So
what's the farthest east you've gone then?
For Comic Con or just traveling?
Comic Con.
Farthest east would be Denver.
Well, we can get you to St. Augustine.
That would be so much fun. I've actually never been to Florida, so.
Well, there's a good excuse, and we always, with Captain Mayhem and the podcast and the St. Augustine Swashbucklers, we always get about 2 booth space. If they don't bring you in as your own, I'll share my space with you.
Well, thank you. I'm flattered. That's awesome.
That would be a lot of fun. Growing up, I never did Barbie dolls. It was always comics, G.I. Joe, and military models. Well, Athena, anybody that knows you would agree with that right off the bat. That's for sure. Yes. So what are you doing with Mason then? So with all the cons you've gone to, other than meeting your creation in real life now, tell us one of your other greatest memories then.
To be honest, comic book wise, one of my greatest memories didn't actually happen at a Comic Con. It happened at one of the local comic book stores. Dr. Volt's the one I've been going to for 31 years. Jim Lee, who is currently the head of DC Comics at the moment. Before he worked for Marvel, and then he was one of the guys that broke away and formed Image Comics, Wildcats, and that huge name, huge fan of his. He came out skiing to Utah, and he realized he had never done a signing in Utah. So he literally Googled best comic book store in Utah. Dr. Volt's was the first one that popped up. He cold called the store and is like, "Hey, I want to come do a signing tomorrow." And it was funny. The store owners at first thought they were being pranked until they got an email from his manager confirming the booking. And so that was really cool just to see him. And he was such a good guy. In 24 hours, he did this signing, and they had a line not only out the door, but it wrapped around about a block and a half because it was the first time he'd been to Utah. And he said he was going to be there for about 2 hours, and he did a signing, and they still had a pretty good line down the street. And to his credit, he didn't want anybody going home empty-handed. So he literally walked outside and just walked right down the line, signing whatever, just had people put it out, and he quickly signed it all before he left. And he got everybody in line. He was just such a stand-up guy, such a good talent. It was really cool to meet him.
Wow, that says a lot about his talent and his character. That's always nice when the celebrities, whatever ranking they are, whatever venue they're in, when they think more about their fans than they do about themselves. That's a credit.
Well, even when he just arrived, it was funny. The store had roped off a parking space for him, put reserved. They were trying to lay out the red carpet for him. And so as everybody's waiting, he shows up in an Uber, walks up with his backpack. He's like, "Hi." So it was just pretty cool to see him. And then when the signing was over, he had to call for his Uber to come and get him. So it's pretty cool.
So I'm sure you've met several celebrities in what you do. Let's see. Will the historian says, "I always use my sister's Barbies as damsels in distress to be saved by Thundercats or Voltron."
Yep. Like I said, Barbie has had so many adventures. It's crazy.
Yeah. Barbie, she's something else. I tell you. So you've met probably quite a few celebrities with all the cons and everything else that you've done. Aside from comic book or art celebrities, have you ever met any celebrities that have stuck in your mind as to be something that's memorable for you?
I'll be honest, as far as pop culture, not really, because I'm the geek that actually stands in line to meet the comic book artists. Everybody else goes and stands in line to meet movie stars, and I'm around the corner in the artist alley just soaking up all the comic book stuff that I can. So I can't think of anyone off the top of my head as far as a celebrity goes. So
So have you ever met Alex Ross?
I've not met Alex Ross, but he does some amazing artwork.
This shows how much I know. That was my son, and my son really big into the comic culture, and he knows all of this. So what is Alex Ross famous for then?
He does a lot of like realistic paintings of comic book characters such as like Superman, and he did a beautiful book called Kingdom Come. I think that was him, Kingdom Come, and like I said, just iconic artwork. So
have you had any of your artwork blown up into posters?
Yep, I have. Sometimes it's interesting. I had not only mine, but recently you had a gentleman who ran a charity event, and it was for the state of Utah, and he asked if he could use the Utah and kind of leased him out for a little bit to run that charity. And so it's weird when you walk by and see your character being used in different advertisements and things like that. So it was pretty cool.
Well, that shows the level of success you've reached, or the level of respect you've reached too, and that's important. As any entertainer, when things that you've done has made it out to other people, and they come looking for you specifically, and I'll say this not as a brag, but as an example, having been the head pirate, or the voice in the face of the Pirate Museum for 13 years now. I didn't even realize it was 13 years. I've been telling everybody it was 10, but it's been 13 years. It's hugely flattering that people, when they're coming to Florida for their vacations, they try to make a side trip just to come to the museum to meet Captain Mayhem. It is overwhelmingly flattering, to say the least. And sometimes there's not even enough words. Thank you doesn't really seem to fit, but to have fans of your work, in your case, your artwork, it really does leave you speechless, and leave you totally flattered. But it also gives you the energy to keep doing more, doesn't it?
It does, and the community itself is amazing. Through Mandy here and her amazing pirates, I've gotten to know the pirate crew there. It's awesome to see the close network they have. But on the flip side, we also have a pretty close network in the comic book creators. So you have probably a dozen local comic book creators that work on various levels. I have friends that work for Marvel. I've got one who's doing Image, and we all get together once a month and go to dinner and just, even just to sit and talk for 3 hours and kind of encourage everybody and realize that we're not alone in our endeavors and our efforts to entertain. I mean, it just recharges your battery and you're good to go.
Have you been offered any opportunities by the big names?
Not yet. And I, to be honest, I'm not 100%. I really haven't sought any. Comic books have a very long history of not doing right by comic creators and artists and characters. And so I've really enjoyed having the autonomy to control my own IP, my own intellectual properties. So I haven't, but again, I haven't really sought it out either.
I guess if you did get an opportunity, they would have a certain amount of control over your artistic talents. And as an artist, that's not always a great thing.
Correct. I mean, you look at Jerry Segal and Joe Shuster, they actually passed away, unfortunately, broke because DC, when they bought the rights to Superman, basically bought them all and didn't include them at all. It wasn't until their estates actually went back and sued DC Comics that they got a little bit of the rights back and the royalties and got their names put on the Superman movies. And like I said, the big studios just haven't always done right by artists. And so, like I said, I enjoy maintaining my own IP. And we live in an age now where, I've got 30,000 followers between Facebook and Instagram. When my last comic that really took off reached almost 3 million people. And so you really don't need a big studio anymore to really reach your fan base. We live in an awesome age where you can go out there and just do it yourself and really reach the people you want to.
So does social media, and I'm probably going to answer my own question anyway, because you just said between two social venues, you have 30,000 followers. That's a huge help with when you come up with something new or you put something else out there, correct?
Correct. It's huge. I mean, and like I said, it's fun to, I mean, just this last year, Facebook actually started paying me when I post comics. And so it's really fun to see that business side of things and try to, basically be your own entrepreneur when it comes to that. And social media has just opened up huge platforms. But again, the risk you run social media, YouTube, even TikTok, the more you put stuff on social media and not necessarily on your own websites and things, you run the risk of being shut down by Facebook, by YouTube, by TikTok. And so it's really important to use social media as a tool, but on the flip side of that coin, maintain your own library, your own connections, and try to drive as many people as you can to your own site, so that way you maintain control.
Are your comic books both hard copy, real life, I can hold in my hand, and online?
Yep, the webcomic's all online, but we hit 10 years this year with the webcomic. It came out of 1 year before the Utah did, and so we just did our first 10-year trade for the webcomic. So that one's a bound book, and then we have the floppies out of the Utahns. The Utah trade we're hoping to have out for Salt Lake Comic Con next year, 2025. We actually just got notice that we have been approved and asked us to come back for the next Salt Lake Comic Con. So that happened today. So breaking news for Captain's Quarters podcast that we will be back at the Salt Lake Fan X. They've given us a table. So
when is that con?
It's September, and I can't remember the weekend, but it's always in September.
It was
my trusty assistant here is looking it up.
The 26th to the 28th.
Okay, that's good. That doesn't interfere with Ancient City Con, which is always the weekend closest to Talk Like a Pirate Day,
which is September 13th to 15th.
Right,
hooked them both up.
She really enjoyed being called by assistant there. Did you see that? I'm gonna be walking the
maybe I'll have to see if I can't get somebody to give me an airplane ticket and come be a pirate at the Utah Con.
You should. It's awesome. We actually have a pretty cool group out here. They have some pirate ships, and the person who runs it is a little but they do a pretty good job. So
well, they would do well to have me at least put my presence on board their ship, I'm sure.
It might be good to have a real captain out here to show the admiral here how to run her fleet.
So my son says, and you were talking about the people that kind of died, passed on broke. So my son says that Bill Finger also got screwed for years.
Yes, he did. In fact, I'm willing to bet the majority of people don't even know who Bill Finger are to this day, which is sad. So
yeah, my son is pretty good on it there. FanX, 26 to the 28. All right, very good. So you can tell my son is pretty much into all this. And some of the others, Zachary Harker, he knows some of them were here, and of course Athena knows what's going on. So I'm hoping that this podcast is a good favorite for some of our people that are much into the comic book world. We're going to have to do at least another episode or two of this one.
Oh, you can spend hours talking about the history of comics. So
well, we're going to have to do that, and I'm going to have to make sure that we set aside a couple of dates down the road to have you on, because since you are a sponsor, part of being a sponsor of our show is to give you at least one episode that's all about what you do. And so besides this one, we're going to have to plan at least one more, because you're a good conversationalist. You have all the right answers, or all the good answers at least. And it's a lot of fun to have somebody that can talk not only honestly, but passionately about their trade. And Davey, I know Davey has been following along with you, and you did a really nice one. Besides our characters, we're going to show it at the end, but I'm going to have Davey pop it up. We took the characters that you did for us, and we created a Christmas card that we put all over social media for all of our fans. Davey, can you put that Christmas card up real quick?
As soon as I pulled it up.
As soon as you pull it up. But you took our characters and then actually created them in a Christmas thing that I just had to create a Christmas card to send out to everybody, because it was such a cool thing. And your artwork is really wonderful. And it's really fun to talk to somebody that is getting involved in the things we do. So as our listeners don't know, but we sat for about 20 minutes before the show and parlayed some other ideas and some other thoughts about how we can do things together, and I'm looking forward to all of that. So tell us, do you have any other plans going on in the future right now?
Like I said, we're working on the Utah 4, which will be out in springtime. Utah 5 we're hoping to be out in the fall, and that'll be the trade. And like I said, the webcomic, we're just working on that. We do some commissions, so you can hit me up on Facebook, Salt City Comics, or saltcitycomics.com. Emails the mightyutah@gmail.com, and we do some commissions there. Like I said, cartooning and comics, that's what we're about. So
very good, very good. Davey, I'm
Yeah.
thinking that I know you're looking for that one. Can you let's go ahead and pop up This Week in Nautical History for a minute, give our
Right.
guest Travis a chance to have a breather, and let the audience see This Week in Nautical History.
Welcome to This Week in Nautical History, sponsored by our friends at Florida Water Tours. Experience the Intercoastal Waterway at its finest, featuring picture-perfect attractions. We begin This Week in Nautical History in the year 1603. First fleet of the Dutch East India Company under Admiral Stephen van der Hagen departs for the East Indies. 1606. The English colonial expedition to America, consisting of ships Discovery, Godspeed, and Susan Constant, departs Blackwall, London, to find Jamestown, Virginia. 1642. Abel Tasman's expedition is the first European voyage to reach New Zealand, sailing into Warewahangi Bay, first confirmed contact with the Maori. 1775. Continental Navy organized with 7 ships. 1777. James Cook is first European to visit Karitmati, also called Christmas Island. And in 1807, U.S. Congress passes Embargo Act, and President Thomas Jefferson signs into law, prohibits American ships from trading in foreign ports as a result of involvement in hostilities between France and Britain. 1810, British frigate HMS Minotaur sinks, killing 480 people. 1832, HMS Beagle, with Charles Darwin aboard, reaches Tierra del Fuego for the first time. And finally, in 1919, first hospital ship built to move wounded naval personnel is launched. And that was This Week in Nautical History.
Very good, Davey. Very good. I see Mandy has come back. And there's that Christmas card. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll probably show that at the end of the show because we're going to wish you a Merry Christmas anyway. But look at the extra artwork that went in. There's the captain running a sleigh, and Mandy's on the front controlling everything. And there's Davey in the back. He's probably playing with the toys, and old Hellfire Henley, he's just hanging on for dear life. It is a great cartoon that you did, and Davey tells me he asked you, and you whipped it right out very quickly. So your artwork is outstanding. We appreciate you being a part of it. And anything you want to, I always like to give our guest the last minute. Doesn't mean you're off the screen because we're going to do a couple other things, but we want you to stay on board with us. Anything you want to pass along as words of wisdom to everybody?
just you miss 100% of the chances you don't take. So if you're dreaming of jumping into comics or writing or anything or podcasting or whatever it is, always try, because you never know what'll happen. And I waited so long to start the cartooning stuff 10 years ago. Yeah, it wasn't until I ran into a dear friend of mine and fellow comic creator, Chris Hoffman, who was doing something similar. And I thought, well, if he can do it, so can I. And I threw it up on Facebook, and it was crazy how fast it took off. And here we are 10 years later. So like I said, if you have a dream, just try.
Hey, I agree with you 100%. Look at me. I'm 65 years old. I'm dressed as a pirate all the time. it's really hilariously funny that most people know the pirate character William Mayhem, and most people don't know my real name. That's okay.
I'm right there with you. Everybody knows the big fat Utah blue hero, and not me. So,
Was that a car or a truck going by?
yep.
Yep. So I'll give you a perfect example to illustrate what you said about you'll never know until you try. And if you got something in your mind you want to try it, I played Captain Hook in the ballet here in St. Augustine for 2 years. And at first I wasn't going to do it. I just couldn't imagine myself being in a ballet. And as an entertainer, I've done all kinds of things, juggling and magic and comedy, and now even singing as a pirate, because nobody cares that a pirate can't sing. They just want to hear a pirate sing. But I literally was at that point when they asked me to be Captain Hook for the ballet. I was like, no, that's not for me. But then I thought about it for a couple of days, and I thought, Dustin Hoffman can do it and Christopher Walken can do it. They both played Captain Hook. Why can't Captain Mayhem play Hook? And it was a blast. And I got to work with some wonderful children in the ballet. And even to this day, the children that were in the ballet are now young adults. And when they're around town, if they get a chance, they come see me and I get to talk to them and I get hugs. So you really do. You step outside your comfort zone for just a few seconds and you might find out it's not so bad. And you take those chances and you have a good time, and it might play out to something. Look what you've done. You've taken your artistic work, and now you're a very popular and very well-known comic book artist. And we're proud and pleased to have you be a part of our family and our team here. And you're part of us for at least for 2024. And after that, we'll see what happens. Maybe we'll just replace Mandy with you. I don't know. We'll see what happens.
I don't look as good on a reindeer, so.
I don't think any of us would look as good on a reindeer as Mandy does. So it's very important to step outside your comfort zone, especially nowadays when everybody's so nervous about things. But I think it's important to get out there and do what you want to do and have a good time. So Will the Historian says he would love to have a deep dive debate on some of the errors of comics. That might be a perfect subject for the next time we're on show together. How's that sound?
I absolutely love it. It's fun to dive deep into the Golden Age and Silver Age and the Bronze Age and the Modern Age, and actually have people that know what those ages are. So like I said, it'd be awesome.
All right. Davey, do you know those things too?
Yes, sir. Mostly Marvel, but yes, I do.
Well, in that case, what I'll have to do is we'll plan that. That would be wonderful. I'll have my son send me some information so I'm up on it, so I don't ask stupid questions. As the captain, I still have to control things, but I want to make sure I ask intelligent questions, but we'll go from there. And I think it would be a wonderful show that we could do. But the other thing that would be fun is between Will the Historian, who's so up on things, and you, who's so up on things, maybe pick a couple of dates in 2024 that are important to the comic book era. For example, I'll throw this out there as an example. It's an example only, but Stan Lee was pretty big in the comic book world. And there are, from things that I've seen and read, you either love him or hate him. But picking a show date that's around the time that he did something really great or became really famous, or his birthday or whatever else, would be a great example of why we would put a show on like that. So I'm open to those kind of things. And that's what we tell all of our guests. If you want to be a guest on the show, pick a date that's close to something that's important to you. When my son has been on the show twice. In June, we did D-Day. In December, we did Pearl Harbor, because those weeks happen to be close to those dates. So it's always fun to pick dates that coincide with something we're going to do. And it gives us a purpose. It also gives me an opportunity to do some research so I know what in the hell I'm talking about.
Sorry.
So let's find some dates and let's go ahead and set the calendar.
I'm good with that.
I'd like to say we could probably put you on for 3 episodes next year with no problems whatsoever. But if I can get you to St. Augustine in September, that would be a really good one.
That would be a blast.
All right, we're going to see what we can do about that. Davey, normally we would do mail call, and I'm going to tell everybody right now, plans for 2024, mail call is going to be changed a little bit. Many of you know from my past, I like to write snarky, tongue-in-cheek kind of pages of words. I like to write when I'm mad, or I like to write when I think there's something important to say, but I like to put sarcasm and comedy in all of it. So it's going to be changed from our mail call to the Captain's Corner. And I'll be writing a weekly bit to point out something silly or stupid or fun, and hope that people will share the same ideas and just have fun with it. And that's gonna happen starting in 2024. So I might write something funny about Superman. Who knows? You never know what I might write. So, but I've had some good success with doing that on Facebook, and we did one last week when the sheriff was sitting here. I was very snarky about some of the drivers in St. Augustine during the Night of Lights, and the sheriff actually agreed with all of it and thanked me for it. So I'm thinking that that's a good way for us to start 2024. It'll be called Captain's Corners every time, every week. But for now, right after that would always be This Week in History. So Davey, go ahead and let's go with This Week in History.
Sponsored by?
Oh, I'm sorry. You're absolutely right. Sponsored by, I'm looking at my notes. It is Dick's Wings. If you need a good lunch, Dick's Wings has great lunch specials. But of course, Dick's Wings means that they know something about wings, and they have hundreds of varieties of flavors. My favorite happens to be either Pirate or Georgia Girl. Both of those flavors are wonderful. And if you want a good meal, go to Dick's Wings. They're just down the road from us, and they're a big sponsor for everything we do. And if you come to town and visit, I'll take you to Dick's Wings. You got my word on that. Go ahead, Davey. Dick's Wings.
Welcome to This Week in History, sponsored by our good friends at Dick's Wings Bar and Grill. Wings, salads, wraps, quesadillas, and more. No matter what your taste buds crave, they've got you covered. We begin This Week in History in the year 1719. Thomas Fleet publishes Mother Goose's Melodies for Children in Boston, Massachusetts. 1776, Thomas Paine publishes his first American crisis essay beginning, "These are the times that try men's soul." The date is disputed. 1812, Grimm's Fairy Tales, or Children's and Household Tales by Jacob Grimm and Wilhelm Grimm is first published. 1839, John William Draper takes first portrait photograph of a female face made in U.S. And in 1843, A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens is published. 6,000 copies sold. 1851, fire devastates U.S. Library of Congress in Washington. Destroys 35,000 volumes. 1882, first string of Christmas lights created by Thomas Edison. 1891, first game of basketball based on rules created by James Naismith, played by 18 students in Springfield, Massachusetts. And in 1892, Tchaikovsky's ballet The Nutcracker premieres in St. Petersburg, Russia, now the world's most performed ballet. His final opera, Isolanta, also premieres. 1920, first U.S. postage stamp printed without the words United States or U.S. 1932, The Mummy, directed by Karl Freund and starring Boris Karloff, is released in the U.S. First mummy horror film. 1941, Adolf Hitler takes complete command of German army. And in 1963, the Pink Panther film premieres, directed by Blake Edwards and starring Peter Sellers and David Niven, with theme by Harry Mancini. 1966, Dr. Seuss's How the Grinch Stole Christmas airs for the first time on CBS. Animated special directed by Chuck Jones, features voices of Boris Karloff, June Foray, and Thurl Ravenscroft, with songs by Albert Haig. 1970, Elvis Presley meets U.S. President Richard Nixon in the White House. And finally, in 1974, Nelson Rockefeller is sworn in as Vice President of the United States. And that is This Week in History.
Always a strange one. Most people didn't even know that Boris Karloff was the voice of the original Grinch.
Yep.
In the first cartoon. Very, very cool. Good job, Davey, as always. Now, we normally do guests on deck for the future, but we haven't really set aside the whole calendar for 2024. So we're just going to let you know that it's wide open. And if you're the pirate captain of a crew, you have something you want to talk about, or you have a talent, as our guest has tonight, and would like to be a part of the show, or you have a date in mind down the road that's historically significant and it's something that you're a favorite of, send us a message. Let us know. Davey, put our email up there real quick and let everybody see how they can contact us and be a part of the show. Mandy is part of the Utah Pirates out there and a great part of our brotherhood and sisterhood of pirates now. And we are also going to start bragging about all the pirate crews that are supporters of our podcast in 2024. We're making some changes. In fact, this is the part, well, actually, Davey, let's do the reveal of Mini Mayhem, and then I want to talk about one other thing that's very important of the level of our podcast. So
Okay.
Go ahead and do the reveal of the week, sponsored by...
Sponsored by Salt City Comics.
Go ahead.
Okay, it's time for the answer to the joke of the week. What is a pirate's favorite cereal? The answer is Captain Crunch.
Hi, and you know why it's Captain Crunch, Davey? Captain Crunch is the only cereal that makes a man out of you as it rips the roof of your mouth off. That's why it's like pirate's favorite cereal. Yes, very good. So we have some great news. The podcast is reaching those monetary levels, and I'm going to throw it at Mandy. Mandy, what does it mean for us?
So we achieved and got approved for the first level of monetization through YouTube. So now we're still putting in the levels of membership for YouTube contributions to help support and keep the podcast going. But you'll notice on live, and because we're in my conference room, I don't have mine up to show you how it all works or highlight anything. But if you are on YouTube right now, there's certain things called super thanks and stuff that will pop up that you guys can actually hit and use to donate in to help support. So if we're running any sort of fundraisers for causes, we can use those to help for causes, or you can just throw them at us to help support the podcast and the expenses that go along with it. We're just shy of full monetization from YouTube, which will include sponsored ads. We should potentially, from projections, I don't know, Davey might have a better one on this one, about 2 to 3 weeks, we might have that at the rate of speed that it's been going.
So the memberships will give you special privileges. One of those special privileges is that we're going to do some after the show shows, kind of a late night show. We haven't given it a title yet, but those of you that know anything about my nice, gigantic pirate room here, I have a great table over here on the other side of the room that we can focus the camera on and just sit around with my big screen over there. But the best part about those after shows, if you are a special membership member of our podcast, you get to be in one of these squares, and we can put about 12 to 15 squares up, and you can be actually on that show with us, talking to our guests or talking to us, or just having a conversation about whatever you think is a lot of fun and important. Those after shows will be themed. Pardon me. For example, I'm pulling in a few famous magicians from my old days that want to come and be a part of the show. And I'm trying to get a couple of them to come here so we can sit and talk about old stories of the old days of magic. And you can actually ask questions. You might not get any secrets, but you can still be a part of the conversation and be with us. And we're thinking of other ways to do that. We're also going to do some short video clips. They call them shorts, I believe. And those short video clips, only members will have access to. And some of those themes might be some secret histories of St. Augustine, or maybe a how to do a magic trick. And I'll show you a couple of magic tricks that you can learn to do. So there are some great ways that the membership will benefit you. Also, during the show, if I understand it right, and Mandy can correct me, during any show, they can make donations to us. And if we decide we want the donations to be for a specific charity, that's what your money will go to. Am I right?
That is correct. And they can do that now. That part is active. So if they wanted to do anything at the moment or test run it, they should be able to see that at the moment. The membership's the only thing that's not active yet on where we're at.
Mandy, explain about the little emoji things.
The emojis will come with the membership. You'll be able to get little special emojis that you can talk with or post at in the YouTube chat that'll be customized for this channel. So when you pay into the first level of membership, you'll have access to all of the emojis that will go with it.
So it's just going to make being a part of our show more fun, and we hope we'll bring more people into our audience, because the more people we have in the audience, the more questions we have, the more conversation we have, and the more fun we have. And that's what we're trying to do. We're streamlining our format for the show starting in 2024, and we're looking at bringing in all kinds of extra guests and having lots of fun with the show. For example, our good friend now, Travis, our artist for the show, we'd like to have him be a part of the show and do other things. And maybe there's something we can do that includes him as part of your membership. We'll have to talk to him about it now that I put him on the spot for it, but we'll see what we can do. I'm good at that, putting people on the spot, but it's a good way to be ahead of the parlay, if you know what I mean. Upon that note, Davey, give us our thank you.
The Captain's Quarters podcast is indeed a ship sailing the seas of the world, always in search of history, knowledge, and adventure. It takes a crew to run a ship, so we take this opportunity to thank those who help keep this ship afloat. Our sponsors: St. Augustine Pirate and Treasure Museum, Dick's Wings Bar and Grill, Ancient City Sirens, Spyglass Travel, Marco's Pizza, Florida Water Tours, Riker Reenactors, Paper and Strings, and Shiver Me Pictures. The supporting cast and crew: Captain William Mayhem, Navigator Davey Longwood, Gunner Hellfire Henley, Cartographer Mandy Joe, Juan Cam, and of course, the Powder Monkey. Helping others gives a crew purpose. Inc. Investing in Kids. St. Johns County Fire Cadets. Says St. Augustine Youth Services. And the Humane Society. The 4 major charities report, but always room for more. You too can be part of the crew and support the show in many ways. Go to Patreon. Support us with a small monthly contribution as a Powder Monkey or First Mate memberships. Go to YouTube. Hit the like and follow buttons to join our ranks and support the show. Or a single contribution which helps with other expenses of the show. Thank you. It does take a crew.
Davey, we'll be making some changes to that in 2020.
Yeah, that has to change too. Also, we'll be adding Salt City Comics to the sponsor thing.
And Alias Acres to the charity. Yep, very much so. We got to change that. Show our platforms, Davey. If you're watching our show live, you get us on YouTube. But if you watch us after the download, you can catch us on Spotify or Instagram. If you just want to listen to us because you don't want to look at us, and I understand that, you can catch us on Stitcher, iHeartRadio, CastBox, Apple Podcast, and Music, Amazon. Very easy ways to catch up with our show. And all the shows we've done, this is 113th episode, I believe it is. So all the shows that we've done can be watched there all along the way. Yes, it's the 113th episode. We're at 1,474 subscribers. My goal for the first of the year is 1,500. So that means we are 26 away. So hopefully we can hit that 26. If I have to beg, borrow, and plead, we'll see what happens. Our top videos: The Ghostly Encounter, St. Augustine Heritage Association, and Sheriff Hardwick is always a great person to have on the show. And he's scheduled for 3 episodes next year. So we'll see what happens. It's always fun to have all these people on board the show. It's always great to have different topics of conversation. and I hope that I always ask the right questions. If I miss a question, though, that's what our comment section is for. Make sure you ask the questions that I miss. Upon that note, next week will be pre-recorded and probably bits and pieces of our best of. We will not be doing a show on Christmas night. But that means then our next show is the 1st of January, which is 2024, our new year. And I'd like to take this time to say, if I don't catch up with you in the next 2 weeks, Merry Christmas and have a graciously wonderful new year. Mandy, you be safe out there. Travis, a pleasure to have you a part of the family.
Thanks for having me.
I believe I will see you hopefully on January 6th. And Davey, I'll probably see you before then. But from me, the captain, to all of our people watching, I wish you a merriest of all Christmases and a happiest of all New Years. Davey, you have anything you want to say?
Same thing. I hope everybody has a wonderful Christmas, gets everything they want, and a prosperous New Year.
And Mr. Hellfire, you want to add to it?
I likewise. I hope that everyone has an amazing Christmas and stay safe, especially.
Aye. And Miss Mandy, go ahead.
Happy holidays and do not freeze.
You'll be colder than us, that's for sure. And Travis, you have the last word before we go to closing.
And I heard him exclaim as you rode out of sight, Merry Christmas to all, and to all a good night.
Very good, very appropriate. And to all of you, we look forward to seeing you on the 1st of January, 2024. Davey, I think we've done a good show. We've had a good year. Go ahead.
Part of the podcast.
Part of the crew.
Always.
Can't do it without you, ladies and gentlemen. You're the reason we're here and having fun. Merry Christmas. Happy New Year. Next year.